All right, well, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock on Thursday, May 9th, so let's call this Airport Advisory Board meeting to order. Kayla, would you mind please calling the roll?
Chairperson Harrison Earl.
Here. Thank you very much. First item on our agenda, as always, is public invited to be heard. For formality's sake, I'm going to ask if anyone would like to speak, even though there's nobody else here. And then we'll close the first public invited to be heard and move on to the approval of the April 11th, 2024 minutes. Does anyone have any changes, comments to any of those minutes? Vice Chair Jordan.
I noticed on page 1, line 31, the language isn't quite right. Discussed that the project would be best for the grants money, would be the LED transition from lighting, for lighting, I think it should be, over from standard to incandescent, or over from standard incandescent to LED. We just need to kind of fix.
Contestant? We've got to contest it,
Yeah, so it's incandescent. So however that should best be worded, that we want to use the grant money to transition the runway lighting from standard incandescent to LED. And then on page 2, line 20, it's actually something I said, which I'm not sure what I said, but the board, any pilots on the field, it says runners, I think I probably said hangar owners, and the public are invited to contribute. It was talking about the annual report. So I think that's hangar owners, but I wasn't even sure.
Yeah, well, we can change that to hangar owners and revise the the wording on page 1 with the lighting. Anything else, Melinda?
That's it.
Does anyone else have any changes, comments? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended with Melinda's comments? Mr. Dean?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And just for the record, I'm going to call that 4 approved. I'm going to abstain just because I wasn't here, so I can't vouch for the accuracy. So 4-0 with an abstention. Updates from the airport manager. Levi, where do you want to start?
Alrighty. Current updates. Kind of building off recent events. Tuesday did an airport update for the city council, and Melinda and Harrison were there for that. I can give a little quick update for everybody here, just at least let you know what I talked about. We talked about current activities at the airport, which was essentially the National Guard was there for their annual firefighter training and stuff like that. We talked about airport projects in the works. That's all stuff that we've talked about here before. That's the wildlife fence project coming up this year, and then next year the pavement rehab project coming up. I gave, it was great interest, of course, to the city council. Unleaded fuel, that was one of the main questions they actually asked me to address during the airport update, so I kind of gave them the background, the history on where we're at now with that, where the future potentially is going. To give a quick summary on that, so I'm not sure if we've actually talked about that in a capacity in our airport advisory board meetings. We're a little bit ahead of the curve, actually, because we're an airport that offers an unleaded aviation fuel substitute MoGas. We're on the few in the area, but we don't have any the Swift or the GAMI or anything like that quite yet. We talked about the challenges that's getting to that point, getting that fuel produced in volumes, getting that fuel approved by the FAA in a manner that doesn't create or cause everyone to go have to get a supplemental type certificate. What else did we talk about? The infrastructure that would go behind it. You can't just have it poof magically on the field. You have to have the infrastructure, the tanks, the fuel tanks, stuff like that. So that's the kind of update we gave them. I also gave a quick rundown update of those of you who are a little more tied into the industry. You might have heard about UND's recent struggles with the new Swift fuel. UND looking to, technology school, drive forward the concept of unleaded aviation fuel, switch their whole fleet over to the new Swift unleaded. and in about a month switched it back. They had pretty significant engine fouling issues, damage to exhaust valves. So they're sorting all that out. So that was a little bit of a setback on that. We talked about commercial development on the airfield, which is something else we've all talked about here. That's why we're doing the airport master drainage review, so we can potentially open up the airport for RFPs and stuff like that. So we talked about that. And then we gave an air show update. A pretty quick, just general air show update, when it is, what we're expecting, kind of stuff like that. Nothing too nitty gritty into the details, but a good overall view. I thought it was just an excellent opportunity with the press there, with all the people there, the city council there, just to make sure that everybody's kind of on, what's the term I'm searching for? Informed, if you will, that, that is something that's moving forward with. All right. So that was that first part.
Can I pause for any
I was
questions
going to
from the
say,
board
should we
here?
pause for questions?
Does anyone have any questions, comments on the council update? I'll just say briefly, Levi, I thought you did a great job with the presentation. The council asked some questions. They were clearly engaged in paying attention, which I appreciated. We haven't had a lot of airport FaceTime. We collectively,
Yeah.
city staff, haven't had a lot of airport FaceTime with the council, so that was really good to see.
Yep.
Only other thing I'll add, just for the board's knowledge, is I talked with the reporter at the Times Call prior to Levi's presentation about some of those same topics. The article hasn't come out yet, if it will. There were other things at the council meeting that made the paper instead. But just be aware that, we had a discussion about the air show, about unleaded fuel, and about some of those things, trying to educate him a little bit. So I would expect at some point that comes out.
And that actually brought up, there's one slide I missed there. I also talked about the noise complaints thus far this year. Thus far this year, we've had 17 household complaints, noise or other complaint related, and one positive airport comment put
Love
in.
the positive comment.
You didn't mention that.
Yeah, very few people, put in positive, but one positive airport comment.
Vice Chair Jordan, did you want
I
to?
was just going to say, you were in the Longmont Leader today,
Okay.
so I'll forward you that article. They
Okay.
did a good job.
All right.
Yeah.
That's Mr. Meester. Sorry, it only gives me a seat number, so I have to look at my cheat sheet.
That's okay. I'll be number 2 or 10, depending.
I've got you're number 2 on
Oh,
there.
well, good, thanks. Were there specific areas of noise complaints? Were they mostly centered on commercial operations or just GA?
Yeah, they're mostly GA, and it was asked, because it's a big concern of Harold's with the past, how many Mile High complaints specifically were. And this year, we've only had 2 complaints specifically relating to Mile High. But it's most generally general aviation. It's whoever. And a lot of the complaints, they don't even say. It's like, oh, these noisy planes, they don't. I ask. Usually when I get stuff like that, it's, hey, it would greatly help us if you were to give us in numbers, can you describe it more? And most generally, people never respond back.
And by the way, you live next to an airport.
Yeah. All right, next item, kind of along the same vein, that same city council meeting, after that, they did have the session talking about the potential rezoning for the areas off the approach end of runway 29. City presentation about that, essentially talking what they want to do is to kind of summarize what the city's looking at doing, the approach path that goes into 29, and really the approach path that goes into one, even though that most of that's county property and not within our purview 2 zone, but those sections of it that would be essentially zoning them as non-housing. Where that kind of left at the end of the night is the city council kind of said they wanted more information prior to moving forward with what they wanted to do. I can mention that in sessions prior to that, the city council did vote unanimously to get direction on getting what they wanted to, the information to. I can't talk tonight. Too many council meetings. They did unanimously vote to get the planning department and the city attorney's office to give them direction on what they should do, essentially to avoid issues in the future. So they do seem to have a very aware mindset about the issues that's going on with the FAA and stuff like that. But they did ask for additional information from the FAA, so I'm looking at potentially reaching out to them to get a meeting set up for City Council. John Bauer, John, did mention to me that he would come and talk to the City Council. So I will reach back out to him and see if he's actually going to follow through and do that. We'll see. But that's was also occurred at that city council meeting. Any questions on that? Pause during the update.
I'm going to add a little context if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I would encourage everyone, go look at the city council packet from that meeting. It has an FAA letter in it that you've probably seen before, but it also has a map of these proposed changes that I think is really helpful. If there was a way for me to throw it on the screen, I would, but it's in the packet from the last meeting. They've described it as kind of a paddleboard. So, along the runway and the immediate safety areas is just no development period. And then extending out, really the relevant is kind of from Airport Road to Nelson Road in a diagonal, same as the runway. That's no residential. The challenge among a lot of them is there is residential in that zone already, a limited amount. So creating this zone makes those a non-conforming use, which is, depending on who you ask, problematic or no problem whatsoever, depending on the perspective you believe of the people in the room. And there's also proposed developments within that area that are potentially impacted, again, depending on how you read the regulations and when they come into effect, potentially a huge impact, potentially no impact. One of the central questions, and something I talked to a couple of council members after the meeting about, we've certainly seen this in other airports locally, so it's very easy for them to grasp. There have been conflicts in and around Rocky Mountain Metro, kind of notably. This comes back to one of our 39 grant assurances that the airport sponsor agrees to every time they get a grant from the FAA. Grant assurance 21, I want to say.
Yeah,
is
21 or
land
22.
use.
Yeah.
And it effectively says the airport sponsor, in this case, City of Longmont, must take reasonable steps to prevent incompatible land use around the airport. Because City of Longmont owns and operates the airport as the airport sponsor and sets the land use, it's kind of on the city to meet that obligation.
Yeah.
At least the FAA would argue.
Yeah,
And
in
I'm not an attorney.
conversations, in conversations with the FAA, essentially that's what they said. They said, "Hey, you're the city. You control the
Yeah.
zoning. You also control the airport. There's no excuse." It's essentially what they told.
Where in Jefferson County's case, who owns Rocky Mountain Metro,
Yeah.
very different, because the town of Superior, they can yell and tell Superior, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
But then they have
meet their grant obligation.
Yeah.
But Superior can still go develop it, and there's really not a ramification for Jefferson County by the FAA.
Yeah.
A lot to unpack there. There were a lot of really good questions. This will come up more.
It will.
I hope we can keep talking about it as it develops, because I think it would be helpful for us to provide an opinion to the city council when they get to an informal vote point on
I
it
think
as
that's
well.
an excellent thing to keep an eye on. Working with the city, and we've been working on this now for over a year. I think we finally reached a point among the staff is pretty much in a consensus of what kind of needs to occur moving forward to make sure that we're not running afoul of the FAA. I think now it's just now communicating that to the city council. It kind of seems. It kind of seems to be the feeling of that.
And there is kind of a second part of this that I didn't talk about, and really the council didn't have any issues with it. But within that overall airport influence zone, there is the call for navigation easements, and that's something we've talked about a lot here, and that it codifies that requirement.
Yeah.
No one seems to have an issue with that, because that is effectively a disclaimer. It doesn't limit development.
Yeah.
It adds a paperwork burden. There was, zero question about that, and I brought
Yeah.
it up in my public comment to the council.
And those are good. I know that we've talked about navigation easements in this group before, but just to kind of touch on those again and reiterate, it's essentially when you buy a new property, it's a piece of paper you sign that says, "Hey, I live next to an airport. I recognize I live next to an airport. It's going to be noisy." One of the first things I sorted out when I got here was we need navigation easements. They haven't codified them yet, but working with consultants and stuff like that, in my personal opinions, the ones that we had written up are very rock solid. They're very good. I ran them past Rocky Mountain Metro's folks to make sure, who just went through all this, that there's nothing that they saw issues with them either. So they are good. I've heard in the past a lot of arguments saying that, we don't need to rezone because we've got these really great navigation easements, and that's not great. Navigation easements is one of those things that is nice to have in your back pocket, but it's not going to stop people from suing you, when it gets down to it. They can still bring a lawsuit, and they can still cause, airport fund dollars to go out the door, even if they've signed a navigation easement, which is what Rocky Mountain is dealing with.
Mr. Meester.
Is there a measured distance for development on any approach?
That's what this is about, changing the code to essentially set a standard for that. So the standard that the planning department here, I think wisely decided to go with, was just the standard that's kind of set out as an example in the advisory circular regarding development around airports. Kind of, shows the airport influence zone, it shows the approach departure areas, if you will, and it kind of says, okay, these are okay for housing, but, within, the approach for runway 29, we don't want daycares, hospitals, schools, stuff like that. Housing. Hotels is mentioned in there also.
So those sizes I'm looking at the ordinance draft
Okay.
on the screen. Zone A, which is no development whatsoever, is effectively the runway protection zone, 200 feet past the end of the runway, 250 feet wide at the end of it. End of the runway safety area extends. My apologies. I'm going to start this over because this is confusingly
It's all
written.
good.
The
You
runway
would mean today, you
safety
would mean-
area extends 200 feet past the end of the runway, and the RPZ extends a further 1,000 feet,
I was gonna say,
450 feet wide at the end.
Hard to land in 200 feet.
Yes.
So then it's out.
And then the approach zone, the zone B, that's the no residential, lodging, et cetera, is 4,000 feet beyond that limit of zone A, so 5,000 feet from the end of the runway. Width at the far end of it of 1,250 feet, it also is a trapezoid, so it kind of gets wider as you go further out. The maps make a lot more sense than what I just said, though.
Yeah, I'll give the planning section at the city here credit. They did a nice job when they kind of thought what's logical and what would be good moving forward. So the maps are nice.
Vice Chair Jordan.
I was going to add that they did mention rentals, that renters, because that is potentially low to medium income
Yeah,
housing.
that's something
And that they
that-
will require the renters to sign the aviation easement.
That's something that came out of early on when we were talking about the aviation easements, is that, yes,
Renter,
something
yeah.
that I brought up is, a lot in the past, I've dealt with people, it's like, well, I didn't sign those documents.
Right.
So how can we also, and it's a little bit of a new thing, how can we also not only have aviation easement in that standard pile of paperwork when you buy a house, but also essentially put language in that saying, if you're a renter, oh, by the way, you're also required to provide this to any new person who's leasing land or
Yeah.
space from you.
And in a lease
Yeah.
agreement.
So in that context, theoretically, if everyone's following the letters of what they're supposed to be doing, there shouldn't be any situations where people say, well, I wasn't ever informed. Because there's, somewhere along the line, there's an obligation that you should have been informed.
Right, by the realtor or the
Yeah.
tenant, the lessor, the
Landlord.
property owner, landlord, yeah.
There you go.
I forgot that word. The other thing, as they were talking about it, and with the map up, I was looking at neighboring airports that they referenced in that conversation, and just taking the length of the available runway on ForeFlight and transposing it, you see it for us with 5,000 feet for 5,000 feet. And a lot of that's unincorporated Boulder County, and it's Anderson Storage. I mean, there's a lot of stuff taking up a good bit of that space.
Yeah.
I do see the carve out. I do see why the
There's-
lawyers were here. But looking at specifically at Erie, given they've had some impacts lately.
And
if you
the-
look at Erie, the length of that runway is exactly what they did into that Anthem neighborhood. They kept it greenbelt, open space, berm. So if you're going on 7, you look up and it's a huge hillside before you get to those homes.
Yeah.
And there was a fatal, we've had
And the
some
FAA
pretty
actually
bad
brought that
fatals
up
there.
during their meeting.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
still have, I've not heard of any homes being hit there. Trees, mailboxes,
Yeah.
people dying, yes, but not impacting a home. And when you look at that, you can see that they really did take that same length of the runway and provide themselves an out that direction. The other direction, just like us, is agriculture. Most of the airport's Boulder. The other direction, even from Boulder, if you lay it over, it goes to about those soccer fields at 119. So and there is nothing, when you're on the diagonal, if you can see down the runway, there's a body of water and trees, but there's no development. So it has been preserved at the neighboring airports. It has not been preserved at Rocky Mountain. They've got a golf course at the end, and then homes right behind that. Of course, the homes are built right up on the shoulders. And then right below it, you've got industrial, light industrial, commercial, and then homes directly below that approach coming from the.
And that's
east
why
side.
there's, and one of the questions that was asked not to get too deep into the discussion, but one of the questions that was asked is like, oh, how come the FAA now is just telling this or sending this letter out? And one thing that I keep trying to reinforce to staff that isn't reiterated very often, I think the very first thing to that is to say no one's ever talked to the ADO before here. So they not really quick to say that, but future incarnations of when the planning occurred from the airport manager, it doesn't seem like anyone had reached out to the airport district office and said, oh, by the way, we're planning this project here. They have been doing the 7460 forms, which I've also tried to communicate to the staff. That's great that you're doing that, but the little office in Washington that handles 7460 forms does not talk to the airport district office in Denver. That's an unfortunate disconnect.
Define 7460 quickly.
I'm sorry, 7460 is the document that you fill out to determine whether or not there's any obstructions in proposed building close to an airport. So if you send that in to the office, all they look at is if there's anything in the flight path. They don't assess it for proper land use. They don't assess it for what's being built there. They just look at the heights of your buildings and if it's going to intrude into their airspace. That's all they look at. It's the airport district's office, which is the local office here, to determine whether it's good land use or not. So that's something that the FAA did reiterate in their meeting, was like, look, we can't comment if you don't ask us. So that came out also.
It's a good discussion for here. I mean, this is the kind of stuff we want to be able to keep moving and pushing forward and doing whatever we need to do to help. So it was good. That was a good presentation by transportation. The discussion was good, and City Council was very engaged in asking questions and sent everybody back with some homework. But I'm glad that we're getting a chance to. This is the thing we've never been able to be involved in. We've always been behind it. It was too late. They were pouring foundations when we found out.
And I'm glad that they are doing it, and I'm actually a little bit surprised how quickly this has kind of come to the front of City Council, because honestly, it seems like just 4 or 5 months ago, and I was kind of banging on planning's door saying, hey, if we need to change the code, let's do it. Let's get in front of City Council. So it's nice to see the engagement, I must admit. All right, continue on with the update.
I don't see anyone else for this topic, so yeah,
All right.
appreciate it.
Little few housekeeping items. Wildlife fence project moving forward with. There is a little bit of a hiccup in that with getting the FAA synced up with the city's procurement department. We're at a point now where pretty much everyone, the FAA, everyone in the city, and myself are all new to doing projects out here at the airport, so all of that knowledge has been lost. The FAA says we can't write you a grant until we get 95% completion documents and things out for bid. The city says we can't do 95% completion documents and put this out for bid until you give us the grant. So that's where we're currently at. I was on the phone with the engineers this morning, and I think I'm 99% sure I've got a fix for that solved. We're doing a quick meeting tomorrow to make sure that we are all good on that for moving forward. I don't see any significant hang-ups on that, but there is a little bit of a hiccup. We want to make sure we move forward with that so we're not missing out on any grants this year, so we can actually move forward with some work. Other things going on out there. Any questions on that? No. That should be rolling along. Little housekeeping things. Mowing. Clemente started today mowing. So he should be done Friday, so I'll probably get out there Monday morning with my map and just make sure that everything was cleaned up via our contract. The Public Works Department is continuing to move forward with installing bollards around the fire hydrants, the gas lines, and stuff like that at the airport to bring us into compliance. They're doing that kind of slowly. It's kind of a when the guys have time project, which is fine. You know, it hasn't been done out there ever, so just to have it kind of slowly being moved on is good. Let's see what else is going on out there. Went to the AAAE National Conference last weekend or weekend before last? Weekend before last, I think. Good, very good. It was in Nashville this year. Educational. I'm glad I got there a little bit early, got to sit through the General Aviation Council meeting. I spoke quite a bit. I think a lot because we're in Boulder County. So it they were asking about hey, who's got, who actually has unleaded fuel? I think I was the only airport there that actually had unleaded fuel on the field. We talked about what we were hearing and stuff like that. So a lot of the new information I got for the city council came out of that meeting. I also attended sessions including alternative airport funding, which is really good to sit through, talking about the grants that are out there that we can potentially get. Not a whole lot of revelations came from that. I think we're still doing pretty good on the grants that we can get. There were some other things that they covered that I was less familiar with, alternatives to loans that I didn't know about on a federal level and on some other direction levels. We're not there yet that we need to utilize that, but it was good to learn about. Trying to think what else came about that. Sat through some interesting sessions, like equity and aviation, nothing that applies to any immediate projects that we're going through right now. Oh, I did try to attend the hosting a large event at your airport. Little seminar. It was only like a 15, 20-minute one. It was, on the sides during lunch, right? They had a little meeting set up along and Harrison knows, along the, in the exhibit hall. It was kind of educational, but mostly it was just two guys talking about how they did an eclipse show at their air show and how they got booze in to it. So not quite as educational as I thought, but it was good to sit through and kind of listen to their experience. That's kind of the highlights of it anyway. I did make some good contacts, including, it actually reminds me I need to call one of the companies, reps is based in Longmont here that does a technology that tracks drones around airports. So I need to give her a call and I just thought I'd touch base with her, take her out the airport, at least let her show show her the airport what's going on. Any questions on the AAAE? I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't grab that figure for you. I know you asked that last time too. I'll try to get that for you. Don't hesitate to remind me next time you see me though, so I make sure that I get that for you. Because I remember it was significantly more affordable than we had last year anyway, so it was like half the cost total, so that's good.
Okay.
But I don't have the exact figures on that.
Cool.
Let's see. Any other questions on the air show? Not the air show, the AAA. Okay, apart from that, that's kind of a good general update at the moment on the airport. Is there anything that I'm missing? I don't think. We can talk about that in comments later. All right.
Any other questions for Levi? Okay. Action items, we have none listed. I was supposed to bring you all a draft of the annual report.
Oh, yeah.
I do not have a draft tonight. We are required to submit it by the end of June. Our next meeting is, I believe, June 11th. If anyone has any input, I haven't seen anything yet. Levi, I don't know if you got anything, but if anyone has input, please send it. Otherwise, I will send a draft individually to each of you to try to get comments, grammar, and everything lined up prior to June 11th.
And something to keep in mind about that is the annual report that the city council wants is like a one-page document. The annual report that we could do, we could do an annual report, and the airport board, we could release it whenever we really wanted to and just send it to city council. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But yeah, it seems like we need to kind of kick ourselves in the butt, and if we want to do something, do something.
I take that one on ownership for that delay, but yes, on all fronts. All right, so since we have no other action items, assuming there was no question or discussion about that one, we're on final public invited to be heard. Would anyone like to speak? Seeing no one, we'll close final public invited to be heard. Board, council, and or staff comments, starting with board members. Melinda, I'm sure you have something, but Malcolm got in first, so Mr. Dean.
The only one I have for Levi is how much we spent for the snow removal for the gear. The totals for, last time you mentioned you would have totals for the next meeting.
Again, I apologize. I left here last meeting and just my notes went out the door, so I didn't get that. But yeah, I can get that for you. Mowing and snow. And again, next time you see me, don't hesitate to poke me too, to make sure that.
Top of your head, was it more or less than the previous years?
This one was going to be less.
Okay.
The year before, this season was a really rough snow season. So yeah, we're doing pretty good on mowing and snow, hopefully this year.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Other board member comments? Vice Chair Jordan.
I was going to bring up something that Matt mentioned since he didn't get here. The gate number 4, he said it was in up and that it was in the up position. And he was concerned about that and asking if it's in up, can it be put in the down position and locked so that people aren't trying to access it?
It just had
But
it just throwing breaker on it.
Okay, because then he said, oh, now it's working. So
Yeah.
I figured I'll bring it up because he won't remember by next month.
So to give everybody a quick update on that, well, unfortunately, they are improving the electric grid out at the airport. In fact, they just did a whole bunch of new conduit on the south side of it. But we're at the end of the electric grid. Those tilt-away gates we have are super nice. All of the airports I worked at with nice entry gates usually use tilt-aways. So the gates themselves are good gates. The problem is that they're reliant upon continuous electricity and a good stream of electricity, which we don't have, but which hopefully in the near future we will have.
Good. All right, so he'll see that in the minutes. The air show, we have our next meeting May 18th, Saturday. Levi's office, unless I get it's May, which is a tough month, graduations and all kinds of stuff going on. So I'm guessing our attendance may still be on the small enough side we can be in your office. I worked on all my responses to my UOPP today. Know what the hot spots are that we got to work on, and I've prioritized our agenda with in progress. Or resolved in progress or needing attention. And so I'm going to be working on those things to have that addressed before next week's meeting. We're continuing to look for sponsors of all shapes and sizes. The air show portion is coming together nicely. That is our biggest expense other than the support. I got the bid on the band shell and all that, and it was incredibly high. So I can't, and he needs an answer because he's got all kinds of people wanting those dates. I'll have to let it go if I don't know, because it's just pretty prohibitive, or get him to scale it down to just something really minimal. He's would like to do really good quality sound, which would be for the announcers, the anthem, then the band. I think of it for the announcers because we've always been weak with that. We've had less qualified announcing and you couldn't hear it. So it's encouraging. It's a projection system that's going to project it over everybody's heads, get the sound out further. It's a lovely plan, but it also comes with a lovely price tag. So those are some things that once we've got a clear picture on budget, with our expected number, I'm having to shoot high on off-duty police and porta potties and trash cans and a lot of expenses. I do have the request into the city for fee waivers, and it was for refuse, police, fire. I think there were only 4 things that I asked for. And we did get our permit fee invoice, so that's going through. Yeah, so I mean, they've been responding, and everybody's
Excellent.
been, yeah, so the new process is very nice.
Excellent. I've been communicating with the city too, and I think that the city they're investing in the air show too.
Yes.
So
you can tell.
they're motivated to
A lot of stuff
make
has
this.
already been reviewed and cleared. And with the new portal, you get to see all of that. So it has each of your, by line, which item, all my responses, and then who's reviewed it, who hasn't reviewed it, then questions, and then they give me a big comment box to respond to their questions. And it's a really nice system, and everything's in one place. So been putting a lot of time in on getting that done. And then just trying to nail down. I'm going to get Brianna to use up the rest of her budget and print us some more cards. Got the cards with the QR code for the
Thank you for
website.
those. Those are nice. I actually
Yeah.
gave some away at the conference.
Good. Oh, good. So Brianna's going to use up the rest of her budget and print some more of those for us. And then Trevor's been working on the website. So if you get a chance to go out and look at the website, see what strikes you as missing, and if you can contribute to it. There's a contact us. You can just put it in there and submit it. And so there's some stringent language he'd used, but yeah, he's still a work in progress all the way up until the end.
One comment that was made to me while I'm thinking about it was I had a group that was asking for like a sign up, like a log on sign up sheet.
So it is on the website.
Okay.
We do have it, yeah. It's got the volunteer form and a contact us, both.
And while we're talking about air show, I can just add real quick, we just did a Stop the Bleed class at the airport, which was really great. The nurses from the hospital had a great time, and we were talking about the air show, and they volunteered. They'd love to be in touch with all this. They said they'd love to come out and do a quick lesson for the volunteer course too, for Stop the
that'd be
Bleed. And they'd like to be more involved with it. I also talked with Joe at the FISDO, and he volunteered hangar space, all the FBO, if we ever need any space like that, not only for the air show, but prior to for meetings and stuff like that. So that's good to know, at least that availability is there.
Was there a sign-up for the Stop the Bleed for people who attended? Was it?
I put out a call to the airport and all their
Yeah.
communications, and we had a decent turnout. We probably had 8-9 people there.
Nice. I wanted to come to that. I had
Yeah.
some conflict. Because that is part of our first aid plan. We do
Mhm.
have to have, I'm going to have first aid because of the number we're
Oh,
anticipating.
certainly, and we'll
Have a
have to
first
have
aid tent,
ambulance
and then I
on
have to have-
staff
yeah,
and stuff.
the
But
whole-
it's great to have the Corps also trained.
Yeah,
of
well,
just
one of
volunteer.
my fire suppression between working with the fire department is that we have pilots with hangars with fire extinguishers on the field. So I will be recruiting hangar owners for the perimeter to have their extinguishers where they can get to them or put them next to their stuff, to have that as available. And we'll see how the summer shapes up. If it's wet, it'll be less of an issue. And there's not a lot of combustibles. I mean, any kind of fire is going to be a big fire. If it's anything, it would be catastrophic. And the police have devised their plan that they're going to brief on for our show. So everything's heavily underway. It's the liquor license, the beer garden, a couple of those things I have to get ironed out. And then just sponsors and donors so we can commit to more acts with the air show and figure out the support,
Okay.
those bigger ticket items.
Mr. Meester.
So if the weather's not cooperative, is it a hard scrub, soft scrub, partial scrub, no scrub?
No scrub. It'll be unless, I did one in 2019 and it snowed.
Imagine that in Colorado.
Yeah, can you believe it? And we still went on,
Yeah.
and we had helicopters come in, CAP came in. It was more military focused for a senior at Silver Creek that was going into the Navy. And they still came in. And that L-39 that Matt owns was there. That's when I got all those pictures of it. So we had a lot of wet snow, but we cleared it and carried on. Our issue in September could be a freak snowstorm, which would melt quickly. It did flood us out September 13th, 2013. Every time I say, the weather will be great, and then I remember September 13th, 2013. So,
It's the risk you take.
yeah, and so, but we can't reschedule, so it's either we have it and it goes wah, wah, wah,
Yeah.
and nobody comes, or we cancel it. So something
Yeah.
catastrophic, we'd have to cancel it. If something on the field happened, as something catastrophic. I don't even want to go into all those possibilities. And then rain would be a damper. Rain would definitely, a low ceiling would mess up our air show portion.
Absolutely.
And we have lost our flyovers due to them running out of time. They had something the night before and ran out of hours. So we have lost that in the past. We're not unfamiliar. It's very disappointing, but the public doesn't necessarily know, and so they just keep going and have a good time. But yeah, it would be catastrophic. We'd cancel a biblical flood, biblical fires, famines, locusts, frogs, what are all the other ones? And then otherwise we'll carry on.
Mr. Dean.
And for Levi, so I did let Melinda know, I do have two food trucks that have committed to the air show, so.
Okay,
We have
so-
an Indian, which actually, I've had both, are very good, Indian restaurant, and then a Mexican place in Longmont. so-
We'll want to coordinate with Alexa. She will be heading
Yeah.
up the,
Okay.
and she should be at the next meeting.
Okay.
She'll be heading up the food trucks.
I
And
know
I
her
communicated after our last meeting to her about the plan to open up that fence, and she loved that idea.
Okay, good.
So we're all on the same page there, too.
Good. And then I guess just anybody, for the people here that are working on anything for the show, if you're asking for sponsorships and donors can come in the form of providing us with something we need. So water, food for the volunteers, printing of the T-shirts. I mean, we have so many small expenses that are, with 100 volunteers, that's a lot of T-shirts. So if it occurs to you or you're doing anything in your personal or business life and find yourself in the avenue of dispensable consumables that could be used by the volunteers that we give to the pilots. Our debrief area is the police, fire, first aid, ambulance. They all debrief in one area. We try to have hospitality for them, just keep people taken care of during the day. Sunscreen, there's so many things, if you think about it, that we can use if somebody wants to donate in kind and donate product or, donate. We purchase, I've asked United Rentals, I've rented the scissor lift from them and asked them to sponsor the price of the rental back. And so things like that. The stickers were sponsored completely by Sticker Giant. And so that's another way to ask. So just if you're about in your daily business, smoke, oil for the air show, whatever it might be. Yeah, so just think in terms of that, and anything, you don't have to come to all the meetings and get bogged down with a lot of responsibilities, but that's something anybody in the community could help us with.
Did you have something, Levi?
No, I'm good.
All right. I've got two things that I'll just bring up, and these are really quick. One, City Council passed on Tuesday a proclamation, this is just for board members, recognizing all of us as board members, and it was Public Service Recognition Week. You've all gotten your letters. Melinda and I, since we happened to be there, were the ones who actually got the proclamation. If anyone would like a copy of it instead of us, at least read it if you'd like to, but it's for all of you. And then second thing, I believe you're there, Levi, too, but before our next meeting, I will at least be at the Colorado Airport Operators Association.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Summer, spring conference, whatever they call it. There's usually some good topics there that we bring back and talk about. I go for my day job, not because of this. Obviously, Levi's here because of his day job, which is this. But just a heads up that we'll have that. We'll bring in anything we can back from that conference to talk about here too.
Yep, that'll be a good one.
Any other comments from anybody?
I got a couple I thought of while we're doing that, just real quick.
Go ahead.
Touched base with the new, I'm trying to think of her technical term, but essentially the new PR lady for the city of Longmont. She came out the airport. She was really excited. I just happened to be there on the day when the helicopters are there. She got the camera crew out, got a lot of B-roll footage for that. That's great. So it was good to touch base with her. And then just quick update on hangar inspections. So far, really good turnout out of 70-some, 80 structures on the airfield. We've already got 50+ people signed up for hangar inspections, so that's really good. I think we've also been having some really, really positive response. One of the things that we decided to do is the airport, since one of the big issues with hangar inspections is fire extinguishers are often, they find fire extinguishers aren't certified, so we're, as airport, are going to cover your first fire extinguisher certification, the cost of it. So we're going to do that. We got a company coming out on the airfield itself that's going to do that cert on those for people. So we've gotten a lot of positive response from that also.
Vice Chair Jordan.
I thought that was a great idea on the fire extinguishers. And then is Marika still involved in communications, or has she moved?
So Marika is flying for NetJets out of Florida.
Okay.
Well, she went to go do the training, I think.
Okay.
I think it's NetJets she's going to go try to fly for.
About time she's that ATP.
Yeah.
And then do you have, I know I saw it announced, but I don't know if I saw her contact. Is that somebody I should probably reach out
Oh,
to?
the new?
Yeah.
It's Jill. Yes.
I saw it like in the paper or something.
You know what? Let me make a note.
Okay.
I should have. Did I not send her an introductory email to the
I feel like you
events
did,
team?
now that I'm asking that, yeah.
I might have.
Yeah,
I'll
I just
double
didn't know
check.
where Marika fit in the puzzle, and so I was, out of respect for our connection.
Yeah, I think
with
I
her.
did. I think she
Okay.
wrote something back generic like, "Hey, great to hear from you guys."
Yes.
Um,
I do have that.
I should
You're right.
definitely,
I've got it.
we should definitely get her the times of the next, because when I remember I was talking to her, I asked her if she would come to the air show meeting. She said yes.
Okay, good.
So that would be an excellent thing
Okay.
to do.
I probably added her
Yeah.
now that I say that. I'll look.
All right.
I'll take that one back on me.
Levi, anything else?
That's all I got.
All right, so we had board and staff comments. I saw Councilmember Martin leave the minimum wage meeting and then walk back in.
Oh.
So I was going to give her a chance to have her own comments, but barring that, any ideas for future agenda items we haven't covered? Anything else anyone wants to bring up? I'm going to then call our meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great evening.